The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell starts right now. Hey, Lawrence.
Hey, Jen, I'm so glad in your discussion with Rachel tonight that you brought up her book, Blowout, about the oil industry of a few years ago, which I absolutely loved, cover to cover. Every page learned something about the oil industry. It's an amazing piece of work and so important for thinking about what's going on with Donald Trump and this oil tanker tonight. Just perfect timing on that.
No question about it. As I said to her, we're going to be greedy. We're going to keep you to talk longer because you've actually thought a lot about the oil industry, and it's so relevant today.
I'm so glad you did. I'm so glad you did. Thanks, Jen.
Thanks, Lawrence.
Thank you. Well, Donald Trump confessed last night. Donald Trump confessed that he was lying. Donald Trump turned himself in as a pathological liar last night. During his first term in the White House, Donald Trump was quoted by unnamed sources who were constantly leaking what Donald Trump was saying in private. And one of the quotes attributed to him was Donald Trump referring to African countries where he has never been, using the worst, dirtiest term he could think of for those countries. It's the kind of language I've heard from hardcore racists my whole life. I knew he was lying in 2018 when he denied using those words. And last night in Pennsylvania, the man who doesn't drink sounded as drunk as the racists you can hear saying things like this in the safety of their neighborhood bars.
Hellholes like Afghanistan, Haiti, Somalia, and many other countries. I didn't say shithole, you did. Remember I said that to the senators they came in, the Democrats. They wanted to be bipartisan. So they came in and they said, this is totally off the record. Nothing mentioned here. We want to be honest because our country was going to hell. And we had a meeting. And I say, why is it we only take people from shithole countries, right?
It's not news that Donald Trump is a racist. It's not news that Donald Trump, who was documented to have told over 30,000 lies in his first term in office, is a pathological liar. It's not news that Donald Trump is a vile, ugly stain on American public life. What we are seeing now is a very sick man in mental and physical deterioration who seems to have no capacity left to remember what he's already lied about, what he's already denied, and has less and less public control over the poisonous racism that seethes inside him and oozes out of him. He is a poison that children should not be exposed to. And he gets worse every day as he declines deeper into mental and physical infirmity and sinks deeper into his own poison. And the only reasonable way to consider what Donald Trump says every day now, especially after last night, is to presume he is lying now. Presume Donald Trump is lying now and fully deserves the presumption of lying. That's what Donald Trump has earned. He has earned the presumption of lying. Think about everything he said today, about anything, and just presume it is a lie. Not one word of it is regardable as anything but a lie until it is somehow proven true by other sources. And that's what makes interviews of Donald Trump so ridiculous and pointless. Every single time, every interview of Donald Trump is filled with lies in every response to every question that is put to him. Every single one of them. The presumption of lying. That's the only way to cover Donald Trump. It has always been the only way to cover Donald Trump. I said Donald Trump was a liar the minute he opened his mouth about Barack Obama's birth certificate in 2011, and no one else did. They all covered it as if there was some story there to cover that wasn't a madman lying. That's all it ever was. A sick, racist, pathological liar. That's all he ever was every time he opened his mouth about President Obama. And the news media pretended it was something else. They invited them on their shows, and they pretended there was something to talk about. And he would tell them he was sending private detectives to Hawaii to check out the birth certificate. And I said he was lying and he was sending no one. And I was right. That's how easy it was. Because I knew then that Donald Trump deserved the presumption of lying and nothing else. And the news media let him get away with that kind of lying to the point where the New York Times first used the word lie 5 years later in 2016 in covering Donald Trump. And the lie they identified 5 years after he started telling it, the New York Times finally felt confident enough to say Donald Trump was lying about President Obama's birth certificate. 5 years they lost in understanding how to cover Donald Trump. 5 years of not understanding that he had already earned the presumption of lying. And so with the presumption of lying, we'll consider what Donald Trump did today. We don't know much about the oil tanker that Donald Trump seized off the coast of Venezuela today. And it turns out, according to him, he doesn't either.
Can you explain a little more about this Venezuelan oil tanker and share a little more information?
Well, I'll let the people do it, but you see the result, and I guess they probably have released the pictures by now or pretty soon. You'll discuss that with the appropriate people later on, but no, it was seized for a very good reason.
We have never heard what that very good reason was from Donald Trump today. No other president would have treated news like that. No other president would have said, oh, it was a very good reason, and leave it at that. And what about the oil?
What happens to the oil on this ship?
Well, we keep it, I guess.
We keep it, I guess. I don't know, he said. He doesn't know. I don't know either. And so there we are. The President of the United States doesn't know what happens to everything he sees today. He doesn't know what happens to the vessel. He doesn't know what happens to the oil. He later said to another reporter, I can assume we're going to keep the oil. Why can he assume that? The Venezuelan government is calling it piracy. According to a government official who spoke on the condition of anonymity, the New York Times reported it was not clear whether the seizure warrant, there was a seizure warrant in this case issued by a federal judge. And the Times is saying it's not clear whether the seizure warrant, which is sealed, was for the ship or the oil or both. The White House did not immediately respond when asked whether the United States had the legal authority to keep the oil. That is exactly what American forces could do when they believe they see drug smuggling heading for the United States. They could just seize the vessel. That's what they've always done until Donald Trump decided to kill everyone on those very small boats, open boats, most of them less than 20 feet long, with outboard engines, the kind of boats that people use for water skiing in this country, boats that cannot possibly carry enough fuel and are not seaworthy enough to cross oceans. Boats that are over 1,000 miles away from the United States of America and are not capable of reaching the United States of America. If you're on one of those boats, the smallest targets the United States military has ever had at sea, if you're on one of those boats, Donald Trump will kill you. But if you're on a supertanker, Donald Trump won't fire a shot at you. In that discussion with reporters, Donald Trump unintentionally revealed why he seized that supertanker today.
Mr. President, has Secretary Hegseth told you why he hasn't released the video of the second strike?
No, he hasn't told me. I thought that issue was dead. You're surprised you bring it up. You must be CNN.
And there you have it. Donald Trump trying to declare an issue dead, just like he tried to declare the Epstein files dead 6 months before Congress was forced into a unanimous vote to release the Epstein files. Donald Trump seized that ship today to change the subject from the second missile that he and his incompetent and unqualified Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth fired at two men who were clinging to the wreckage of a very small boat already destroyed by a missile that may have been bigger than the boat itself. When Senator Mark Warner, the vice chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, became one of the first members of Congress to see that video of the second missile strike of the two survivors clinging to the wreckage, he came on this program and told us that he believed those two men were incapacitated. That was his word, incapacitated, when the second strike was ordered to kill them. It is the most important crisis that Pete Hegseth has faced in his incompetent service as Secretary of Defense. And the issue is not dead. Donald Trump knows the story is not dead. And Donald Trump is not surprised that the reporter brought it up. This is the very same act that Donald Trump tried with the Epstein files 6 months ago.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable.
Unbelievable indeed that that buffoon thinks that that play is going to work again. That's the Donald Trump playbook. Declare an issue to be dead. Wish it to be dead. Donald Trump can kill people, but he cannot kill that issue. That second strike missile that killed those two men clinging to the wreckage is going to be haunting Donald Trump possibly for more than the next year. Donald Trump is trying the same maneuver he tried with the Epstein files, which is to manage a cover-up of that video, the way he tried to cover up the Epstein files, make sure no one ever sees the video of the second missile strike. And it may be that Donald Trump succeeds in intimidating the Republican leadership of the committees in the House and the Senate with jurisdiction over this issue to not conduct real investigations. And if that happens, then our first guest tonight will ultimately be in charge of the first real investigation of that missile strike in the House of Representatives. Congressman Adam Smith is the top-ranking Democrat on the House Armed Services Committee, and when the Democrats win back the House of Representatives in November, as polls indicate they will, Congressman Smith will become Chairman Smith, chairman of the House Armed Services Committee with jurisdiction over Pete Hegseth and the Defense Department, and he will have the authority to obtain that video. On November 28th, the Senate Armed Services Committee Chair Roger Wicker announced that the Senate Armed Services Committee would conduct an investigation into the second missile strike. Last night, the chairman of the House Armed Services Committee announced that he has completed his investigation of the missile strike. This morning, Chairman Rogers reported on his investigation.
I did exactly what I said. I was very vigorous. I personally got involved. I talked with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs first. I talked with the SecDef second. Then we had the Admiral Bradley come in. He gave us a full readout on what happened. We saw the video, got all our questions answered. Talked yesterday at length with Admiral Halsey. I know everything that happened, and I'm completely comfortable. We got all the facts.
And you feel comfortable and you believe that the administration acted within its bounds and its
I
legal
absolutely
authority?
do.
Okay, and no, you have no more questions about it?
I have no more questions.
Yesterday, the Republican and Democratic leaders of the Senate Armed Services Committee and House Armed Services Committee met privately with Admiral Alvin Halsey, who announced his resignation as the head of U.S. Southern Command. Politico reports, though reports indicate Halsey expressed concerns about the legality of strikes against alleged drug boats and was ousted by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, Chairman Rogers said Halsey told lawmakers his departure is personal. He just said that's private, Rogers said. He said it had nothing to do with the operations in his command. Democratic Senator Jackie Rosen of Nevada is a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee. She said this morning before the seizure of the oil tanker later today off the Venezuelan coast.
Secretary Hegseth doesn't have the character or demeanor. He just likes to, well, I'm just going to say it this way, he just likes to show pictures of blowing shit up. I got a bunch of video games, if that's what he wants to do that don't put any active duty men or women in harm's way. He wants to blow shit up and put pictures of it up. God bless him. But don't you dare put anybody in harm's way for your visual.
Senator Jackie Rosen.
And protect everyone.
Leading off our coverage tonight is Democratic Congressman Adam Smith of Washington. He's the top Democrat on the House Armed Services Committee. Congressman Smith, thank you very much for joining us tonight. What is your reaction to the idea that the chairman of your committee feels he has completed his investigation?
I strongly disagree with it. I mean, to begin with, the video needs to be released. We need to see this publicly so that everybody can have an opportunity to evaluate it. The reason they will not release that video is because it's incredibly damning to their entire argument. So that needs to happen. Second, in the conversation with Admiral Halsey, which Mike Rogers and I were sitting next to each other during it, he did not say it had nothing to do with anything going on around these boat strikes, his decision to retire, that is. He said he had a very personal conversation with Secretary Hegseth and Chairman Kane, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and at the conclusion of that conversation decided that it was in his best interests to resign. That's an entirely different statement than saying it had nothing to do with any concerns he had about what's going on down there. Also, there was a very confusing explanation of the chain of command on these strikes, who had the authority to decide to target when. I've got 1,000 more questions, and a lot more investigation needs to be done. And based on what I've seen thus far, we need to investigate this for a possible violation of the law. Again, if they release the video, 95% of the public would agree with me on that point.
Was Admiral Halsey himself confused about the chain of command?
No, I don't think he was confused about it. It's just that it apparently bounced around from several different people. Sometimes it was Secretary Hegseth. Sometimes it was Admiral Bradley. Sometimes it was Admiral Halsey. And confusingly, sometimes apparently it was one of the MU commanders, a Marine commander of one of the amphibious groups down there. Based on what? And what is the legal underpinning of this? It's also worth noting that the legal document, which again has not been released publicly, we've seen it in a classified setting that supposedly offers up the legal justification for these strikes, wasn't even written until September 5th, so 3 days after the September 2nd strike. And Admiral Bradley testified he didn't see it until November. So what was the legal authority that they were operating under, and what is the point of this entire mission? As I said, I got thousands more questions. This investigation is far from complete.
It's hard for me to imagine what could be in a legal memo that would have to be classified.
Nothing. Nothing. There's nothing in this video either. Now let me amend that. The video itself, from the beginning of the operation to the end, is about 5.5 hours. That's from before the first strike to the second. They've already released the video of the first strike, and they've also released the video of, I think, at least 15 other strikes. So clearly, you can release some of these videos without revealing anything sensitive. And the actual video of the minute or two before this strike, the second strike that hits the two people clinging to the wreckage of this boat, there's nothing classified about that. It should be released and the public should be able to see it. I mean, they're very anxious to release the rest of the videos, to Senator Rosen's point. They seem to like to show that. There's no reason they can't release this and show the public other than the fact that they know it is damning to their entire argument.
If we had collapsed time and you were just a month away from becoming the chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, as you may be a year from now, what would be happening that would be different in this investigation? What would the Defense Department know? What would Pete Hegseth know was coming on day one of your chairmanship?
Subpoenas to make sure that they turn over the information to us that they're supposed to turn over to us and that they haven't. Beginning with this is something, as I forget if you mentioned it at your broadcast or I heard it somewhere else. We just passed the defense bill where we fence a certain amount of Pete Hegseth's travel dollars until he turns that information over to us. All of the information surrounding these strikes, the videos, but also importantly, the documentation supporting it. Who made a decision based on what? We should see that documentation. And then we would bring in everybody up and down the chain of command. Look, it's a basic investigation, and I don't trust Hegseth, all right? I don't trust him to tell us the truth. So I'd like to go up and down the chain of command, everyone who was involved in it, and say, what did you see? There was a report, I think, in the press today about a later strike in October, the one where 2 survivors were actually picked up, where there's a whistleblower complaint out there now saying that there was an order given to destroy all of the records and all of the video around those 2 people being picked up, questioned, and released. So we'd go up and down the chain of command to try to find what the truth was instead of simply taking the word of Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth for it. And I think the country's owed that. You know, what's going on here and why? We're owed an explanation and the legal justification for all of these actions.
Congressman Adam Smith, thank you very much for leading off our discussions tonight.
Thanks, Lawrence.
Thank you. And coming up today, a 3rd judge ordered the Epstein files under his jurisdiction to be released according to the new law passed by Congress unanimously. Congressman Jamie Raskin, the top Democrat on the House Judiciary Committee, will join us next. Today, the 3rd federal judge with jurisdiction over portions of the Epstein files issued an order to release the Epstein files in his jurisdiction, quote, in accordance with the Epstein Files Transparency Act and with the unequivocal right of Epstein victims to have their identity and privacy protected. Judge Richard Berman said the language of the Epstein Files Transparency Act, passed unanimously by Congress over Donald Trump's objection, quote, is crystal clear and should be afforded its ordinary common sense meaning. Joining us now is Congressman Jamie Raskin of Maryland, the top Democrat on the House Judiciary Committee. Congressman Raskin, this really has been a lesson of government in action. I have never seen legislation go from your hands in the House to the Senate, signed into law, and on to judges' opinions so fast.
Well, and the same judges who refused to waive the 6E protections for those materials are now saying that under the federal law passed by Congress, they must turn it over with dispatch without any delay while protecting the privacy and the confidentiality of the victims. So these judges are very strictly implementing the legislative intent behind the statute.
We're seeing today Donald Trump try to run that play again that he tried to run in the Epstein files 6 months ago, telling reporters that story's dead, that story's over. He's trying to do the same thing now with that second missile strike that some legal experts are calling murder in the Caribbean.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about self-protection. The same kinds of things he, of course, accused other presidents of doing, he's actually doing. It's a massive projection, and it's the same thing here. I mean, he was the one who went out with all of his people and said, we want to see the full Epstein files. They're the ones who promoted the whole QAnon story about a power elite trafficking in children and human flesh. And what do you know? That power elite is the one that Donald Trump knew integrally well because he was Jeffrey Epstein's best friend. And the truth is going to come out now under this law. And there is a tremendous momentum behind the disclosure, not just of the grand jury records, but of all of the discovery materials. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of documents that are going to be released.
You know, I keep flashing forward these days, and I'm flashing forward a year, which I shouldn't do. I shouldn't try to be predictive in politics, especially in this era. But with all the polls indicating that the Democrats are going to win the House of Representatives in the next election, I'm imagining that year from now, when you're taking over the chairmanship of the House Judiciary Committee, and what you would have the power to investigate, including what is going on with all the contracts that are being awarded in the immigration sector and the imprisoning of people involved in all of these immigration maneuvers that the Trump administration is doing. You will be in the position to conduct those investigations.
Well, let's hope so. Of course, I'm out on the road every weekend, Lawrence. I'm in Ohio, Florida, Texas, New Jersey. We're campaigning hard, and these amazing victories you're seeing around the country are just the beginning. They're the groundswell that is going to hit a tidal wave crest in November of next year. So we're just building now. But your point is correct. We are documenting all of the outrages and all of the corruption that we're able to find out about, and we are demanding answers now, knowing that they're going to do everything they can to drag their feet and sweep it under the rug. But, $170 billion extra was voted to go to ICE, and that's huge, big-time payoff bonanza for a lot of these government contractors that are very tight with Mr. Homan and other officials in the Trump administration. And so we want to know everything about what's taking place with these homeland security, military, industrial contracts and networks that they've brought into the Trump administration. Everybody saw or at least heard about the $50,000 payoff in the Kava bag pocketed by Mr. Homan, but that's just chump change compared to the hundreds of millions of dollars that contractors like GEO are bragging to their investors that they're going to be able to get from the Trump administration.
Well, when you're chair of Judiciary, I think we're going to find out what happened to that $50,000 in the paper bag. Congressman Jamie Raskin, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
You bet.
And coming up today, the chairman of the Federal Reserve confirmed Donald Trump's tariffs are causing inflation. Obviously, some consumers are facing 100% inflation on their health insurance premiums, thanks entirely to Donald Trump and the Republicans. That's next with Senator Amy Klobuchar. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell explained today why people are feeling sharply increasing inflation now.
These readings are higher than earlier in the year as inflation for goods has picked up, reflecting the effects of tariffs. The story with inflation, and we're well aware that this is a story at this point, is that if you get away from tariffs, inflation is in the low twos, right? So it's really tariffs that's causing most of the inflation overshoot.
But people struggling to pay for health insurance this year are facing something much more dramatic and painful than inflation. American households, including self-employed business owners, freelancers, and early retirees, have 5 more days to sign up for health insurance on the Affordable Care Act marketplace to ensure coverage beginning in January. But without an extension of the subsidies people receive to pay for their health insurance on the Affordable Care Act marketplace, those people will be facing health insurance premiums that on average will at least double. That's an inflation rate of 100%. 6 Republicans in the House of Representatives have broken with their party to file a discharge petition to force a vote in the House on extending the Affordable Care Act subsidies, very much against the wishes of their Republican leader, Speaker Mike Johnson. The Senate will be voting on the Democratic plan advanced by Senator Chuck Schumer to extend the subsidies for 3 years. And now Republicans say they will offer their own health care proposal for a vote tomorrow when the Schumer plan comes up for a vote. The Republican Senate proposal is to give people $80 a month to buy health insurance. Yes, health insurance for $80 a month. Today, Senator Schumer said this.
I want to be very clear about what this Republican bill represents. Junk insurance. Let me tell my Republican colleagues it's dead on arrival. The proposal does nothing to bring down sky-high premiums. It doesn't extend the ACA premiums by a single day. Instead, Republicans want to send people $80 a month and pretend that's going to fix everything. It's a you're on your own bill. You got a sick kid, you have cancer, you need a complete top-to-bottom checkup because something's ailing you. The Republicans are telling you, Americans, you're on your own.
Joining us now is Democratic Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota. She's a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee and the Senate Commerce Committee. She's the top-ranking Democrat on the Senate Agriculture Committee. Senator, thank you very much for joining us tonight. I have to say, where did the Republicans get the idea that $80 a month could even pay for anyone's, gasoline for a car for a month?
You mean while they're sending $20 billion to Argentina? They come up with this for the American people. And I really appreciated, Lawrence, that you put this in the context of all of the costs. The fact that the Federal Reserve Chair today said these tariffs are costing people money. They're contributing to inflation. It is literally $2,000 every year for a family that they're experiencing right now. But these health care premiums, our colleagues, and Donald Trump doesn't want anyone to notice this vote tomorrow, but it is happening. They have an opportunity to stop this madness and allow the people of America to get these tax credits that will greatly help them, because these premiums, it's not January, it's not February, it's now. They're doubling, they're tripling, and it's happening now, and they can stop it with this vote tomorrow.
And so we're going to have the vote. Democrats, we know how the Democrats are going to vote. There's a possibility of picking up at least some Republicans. To win, you'd need to get to 60. Is there any chance?
If you followed what they say behind closed doors, as opposed to when they're worried about Donald Trump and rubber stamping him, you might think there was. But right now, they do not seem to be listening to their constituents. They're certainly not listening to the electorate when you look at what happened when we have the first Democratic mayor of Miami in decades, or when we've got that seat that flipped in the state legislature in Georgia, a literally 2-to-1 flip. Unbelievable things are going around the country where the people are just saying, we've had it. We need help with our premiums. We're tired of this $2,000 a year Trump tariff tax. But they're not listening. They're more afraid of him and what he's going to say at some rally on what he claims is affordability. And then he decides to say affordability is a hoax. If the polls show it, the electorate shows it, and certainly they know when 75% of the people on these health care plans are in states that Donald Trump won. They are well aware what this means, this vote tomorrow, where they're basically saying, we'll give you $80, but we're not going to do anything to help you with your premiums.
I just want to go back to what the Fed chair said. He said, listen, inflation without the Trump tariffs would be perfectly reasonable. We at the Fed have really good control over inflation, and they do. They've done a remarkable job with it over the last few decades. He said they'd have no problem controlling it down below 2, but it's the Trump tariffs that is making inflation as high as it is.
Exactly. And we have said this from the very beginning. They are literally taking these tariffs, putting them on countries like Canada, countries that are our allies, countries that we have great trading relationships with in the past. We can always get trade agreements to improve what that ratio is. But right now, these across-the-board tariffs are hurting Americans. As one of my farmers said, it's a perfect storm of ugly. Input costs are way up. Of course, healthcare premiums are up since 24% of farmers are on these plans. And then you've got markets that are drying up all over the world. So when you look at this from a kind of big economic standpoint and what it means for our supply chain, what it means for parts in cars and parts in farm equipment, it's really been quite a disaster. Manufacturing jobs, the thing that he really hung his hat on, they've gone down every single month, Lauren, since he got into office. That's the status of the economy. That's what the Fed Reserve Chair was talking about today. And all of it, we could be in a much better glide path right now, coming out of this, working on housing and childcare, maybe doing something about the debt, Donald Trump, but instead he's gone the opposite.
Senator Amy Klobuchar, thank you very much for joining us.
It's great to be on. Watch the vote tomorrow because these guys don't want you to.
We will be watching. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Coming up, Donald Trump's deployment of the National Guard in Los Angeles was ruled illegal today by a federal judge. Jacob Soboroff was on the streets of Los Angeles covering the National Guard deployment, and he was on the streets of New York today where he interviewed the next mayor of New York and asked the mayor-elect what he will do if Donald Trump sends the National Guard to New York City. Jacob Soboroff will join us next. Donald Trump's deployment of the National Guard in Los Angeles was not just an unnecessary and ridiculous stunt for the cameras. It was also against the law, according to federal judge Charles Breyer, who issued his ruling on the case that Governor Gavin Newsom filed against Donald Trump and the Trump administration today, saying, the judge said, the founders designed our government to be a system of checks and balances. Defendants, however, make clear that the only check they want is a blank one. 6 months after they first federalized the California National Guard, defendants still retain control of approximately 300 guardsmen, despite no evidence that execution of federal law is impeded in any way, let alone significantly. What's more, defendants have sent California guardsmen into other states, effectively creating a national police force made up of state troops. In response to plaintiffs' motion to enjoin this conduct, defendants take the position that after a valid initial federalization, all subsequent refederalizations are completely and forever unreviewable by the courts. Defendants' position is contrary to law. Accordingly, the court enjoins defendants' federalization of California National Guard troops. Enjoins meaning forbids. The judge issued this order to Donald Trump and his administration. Defendants are directed to return control of the California National Guard to Governor Newsom. Gavin Newsom just beat Donald Trump, crushed Donald Trump. Jacob Soboroff was on the streets of Los Angeles when the National Guard arrived and proceeded to do absolutely nothing in Los Angeles. The National Guard did. Today, Jacob Soboroff was on the streets of New York City with Mayor-elect Zoran Mamdani.
What are you going to do if Greg Bovino shows up with the Border Patrol agents and goes down into the subway? You know how important the subway is to all working class people in this city and the chill factor that it would send. What do you do in response to something like that?
Well, my responsibility is to do the work necessary to ensure that that doesn't take place.
That he doesn't even make it into the subway?
To have that hypothetical not come to bear here in New York City, and what I mean by that is by making the case to the federal administration that these kinds of actions do not serve the interests, even the ones that they are actually putting forward. That what New Yorkers need from a federal administration is the kind of partnership that will actually keep New Yorkers safe in this city, and that what I also told the president is we have the NYPD here. We trust the NYPD to deliver that public safety. We do not need ICE and the National Guard to make that same case.
So your message to the president, if he's considering sending in the National Guard troops to New York City or sending in those masked armed federal agents on a wide scale like we saw in LA or in Chicago and Charlotte, is what?
That we do not need them here. And what we have here is the NYPD that can provide that public safety, and that what we are looking to do is to build a city that is focused on the affordability crisis and understands that the cornerstone of that affordability agenda is the provision of public safety. And that was actually the core of the conversation I had with the president, what I would be looking to do and what we would be looking to deliver.
Joining us now is Jacob Soboroff, MS Now senior political and national reporter. And Jacob, thanks for bringing the California warmer weather today. I was just thinking, like, if you had to do that outdoors yesterday, you would have been so
19
freezing.
degrees is no good for me.
This is a much better day for it. That was such an interesting exchange, and it is a mirror to what he was doing in the Oval Office with Donald Trump, where you saw basically he went in there as a lion tamer.
Yeah, he did.
And that was the lion tamer there, saying he's going to talk Donald Trump through this when and if this comes up, and he has succeeded in his first attempt at it.
I thought it was so fascinating to talk to him today because when you watch them in that Oval Office exchange, they were short on specifics, and Donald Trump essentially said, we're going to work out all the details about immigration in New York later. But what the mayor-elect said to me today is, I have been thinking a lot about this. Not only that we don't need the National Guard here and we don't want these masked, heavily armed federal agents on the streets, but I am prepared to be arrested by standing in between the federal troops and the citizens of New York. And not only that, I am prepared to have the New York Police Department, if these federal troops, these ICE agents, these masked armed people on the streets of the city break our laws, to be arrested themselves. It's not something that he hadn't said before, but you know this better than anybody. The closer you get to walking in the steps of City Hall, the second most difficult job in American politics, as John Lindsay said, this stuff gets really real really quickly. And he is prepared, I think, to do what J.B. Pritzker has said he would do, Gavin Newsom has said he would do, is stand up in the face of all of this.
Yeah, I mean, the whole interview from start to finish is worth it. I just wanted to go in the time we have to that spot where it's the what if.
Yeah.
And that's what we're all kind of wondering in the Oval Office. What if this happened? But he does seem ready for it. He's seen enough. There's been enough for him rehearsals around the country, from Los Angeles now, and with the outcome in Los Angeles today with the judge, it has to build some confidence in the mayor.
Yeah, everybody should watch the full thing. You can scan the QR code on the bottom part of the screen. But what he has said is this is happening in 26 Federal Plaza in New York City already. We are watching this play out. There's a 6-year-old Chinese boy and his father who have been separated. That boy is in ORR custody. The father's in the detention center here in Orange County, only because this is already happening on the streets of New York. And he says if they want to ramp it up exponentially, our response in New York will ramp up exponentially as well.
Yeah, and what New York needs in this situation to try to diffuse this with Donald Trump is someone who knows how to talk to Donald Trump. Like that's the first thing. And it turns out, it seems very clear now, this was the best candidate for that point of being able to talk to Donald Trump. This is better than what Cuomo could have done.
The mayor-elect of New York has been arrested himself standing up for the rights of people in the city of New York as a state assembly member. He's prepared to do it again as the mayor of New York City. I was an advance guy to Mayor Bloomberg. I know the importance of the relationship between the city of New York and the White House. He's prepared to put it on the line to defend New Yorkers right now.
It is just a great interview. People really have to see the whole thing. Jacob Soboroff, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks.
Tonight's Last Word is next. Damson Senzani, the head teacher at the Chapita Primary School in Malawi, told us when we delivered desks like this one to his school last month that he never saw a desk when he was in elementary school.
I did not expect to have desks in primary school. And what I was thinking then was that desks are only for secondary school education. Because a lot of primary schools during my time had no desks.
I asked Damson how he felt when he heard we would be delivering desks to his 800 students who have been sitting on the floor.
I was overwhelmed. In fact, I was very happy when I heard that I'll receive the visitors from UNICEF.
The highlight of my year is always delivering these desks to schools in Malawi that don't have desks and seeing the joy it brings to those kids who don't have anything, seeing how it changes them, energizes them as students. They take possession of those desks proudly, sitting at their new desks. You can help by going to lastworddesks.ms.now and contributing any amount. No contribution is too small. You can designate that your contribution is for desks or for scholarships for girls to attend high school in Malawi, where public high school is not free. There are thousands of girls who are in high school now and in college now in Malawi, thanks entirely to your generosity. And you have lifted hundreds of thousands of children off the floor in their elementary schools, and they all sing their thanks. That is tonight's Last Word.